Hey, first grade, welcome back. Today we are going to read the story Tutankhamun, the Golden Pharaoh, Part 1. Another very tricky name that Miss Vanmer is going to have a very hard time saying. So, bear with me, friends. Okay, our learning objectives are to review the significance of the Pharaoh HATSHEPSUT, identify key details about the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, demonstrate an understanding of the word archaeologist with assistance, create a class timeline to depict pharaohs of ancient Egypt over time, and explain how pharaohs impacted the ancient Egyptian civilization. Our key vocabulary for today are archaeologist, authority, passage, tombs, and valuable. Archaeologist is a noun, and an archaeologist is a scientist who studies the way people lived in the past by looking at what they left behind, such as tools or pottery. The archaeologist worked for years to find the location of the ancient city. Authority. Authority is a noun. An authority is the power to make rules or laws and make sure people follow them. The police have the authority to stop speeding cars. Passage. Passage is also a noun. And passage is kind of like it's a hallway, okay? The group walked along a secret passage in the castle. Tombs. Tombs is a noun, and tombs are places where people are buried after they die. Egyptian pharaohs were buried in tombs. Valuable. Valuable is an adjective, and valuable means precious or worth a lot of money. The dishes had been in the family for many years and were very valuable. All right. Where is the continent of Africa? It is this one, right? And where is Egypt? Remember, Egypt is the country in the northeast corner of Africa. It's right here. Okay. All right. So, what kinds of things did Hatshepsut do as a pharaoh? She had pictures and statues made of her dressed as a man. She had a temple built. She traded with neighbors, right? How was she different from other pharaohs? She was a female. She was a girl, right? And how was she like other pharaohs? She was a ruler. She directed builders and artists to put up pictures and statues of her. She had a temple built, and she traded with neighbors, right? What other pharaohs have you learned about? Djoser, the one who had the dream about the pyramids. Khufu, Pharaoh, Thutmose the first, Thutmose the second, and Thutmose the third. Remember, Thutmose the first was Hatshepsut's dad. Thutmose the second was Hatshepsut's cousin, and then Thutmose the third was Hatshepsut's nephew. Okay. So, what is the job of a pharaoh? What is their job? To be a ruler and a leader, right? Okay. So, remember our key vocabulary: archaeologist, authority, passage, tombs, and valuable. I want you to listen carefully for those vocabulary words and also to find out more about pharaohs of ancient Egypt. The story we're going to hear today is about other pharaohs of ancient Egypt. All right. Many years after Hatshepsut ruled, another pharaoh would rule for 9 years and then be almost completely forgotten for 3,000 years. His name was Tutankhamun. although today he is better known as King Tut, which is so much easier than saying Tutankhamun, right? Tutankhamun was only 9 years old when he became pharaoh, and he died when he was only 19. Wow. So he was only a little bit older than you guys when he was the ruler and the leader of Egypt. Can you imagine in 3 years, some of you guys 2 years, being in charge of an entire country? That's like if you became the president at 9 years old. It's crazy, right? I don't think I could do it at 9 years old. All right, let's see. We are not sure why he died at such an early age. After his death, some thought he may have had some sort of accident. When he died, he was not buried in a pyramid like the pharaohs in Hatshepsut's time. Instead, during King Tut's time, pharaohs were buried in the hillsides of a valley. That valley was called the Valley of the Kings. None of the tombs of the pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings were marked. So tombs are places where people are buried after they die, okay? That was one of our vocabulary words. So in an unmarked tomb in that valley, Pharaoh Tutankhamun would rest, surrounded by treasure and forgotten by the world for nearly 33 centuries, a very long time. Now we will jump way ahead in time from ancient Egypt to a time closer to today. Almost 100 years ago, a British archaeologist named Howard Carter was interested in trying to find the lost tombs in the Valley of the Kings. So remember, an archaeologist is a scientist who studies the way people lived in the past by looking at what they left behind, such as tools and pottery. Carter's partner was a British nobleman, Lord Carnarvon, I think is how you say it. I don't really know. Carnarvon was also interested in finding the lost tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Over the next few years, working for and often accompanied by Lord Carnarvon, Carter found a number of ancient objects scattered throughout the valley. But he had in mind a greater prize. What do you think Carter is looking for? Let's see if you're right. Another archaeologist found objects that had hieroglyphs written on them mentioning Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Howard Carter was determined to find the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. I forgot how to say his name. Tutankhamun, I think. And was convinced that somewhere in the Valley of the Kings lay Tutankhamun's hidden burial site. Could he find it? Remember that the location of Tutankhamun's tomb had been forgotten long ago. Do you think he's going to be able to find King Tut's tomb? Let's see. Trying to find the location of the tomb was not always easy or safe. Robbers often showed up to steal any valuable objects whenever they heard of new discoveries. Remember, valuable means precious or worth a lot of money. In a book about his career, archaeologist Howard Carter wrote about one dangerous encounter with such thieves in the Valley of the Kings. A band of robbers had learned of a discovery, and on a moonlit night, the thieves crept through the shadows of the valley, determined to steal whatever they could carry away. But just as they were starting to gather the loot, a second band of robbers appeared with the same idea. Instantly, the two bands of robbers attacked one another in a fierce battle, there in the moonlight amid the burial sites of the ancient pharaohs. The second band of robbers chased off the first, but Howard Carter in his nearby camp heard the noise of their fight. Here is how he calmly described what happened next. I collected the few of my workmen still nearby and set out for the scene of action in an expedition involving a climb of more than 1,800 feet over the hills in the moonlight. It was midnight when we arrived to the scene. The guide pointed out to me at the end of a rope dangling down the face of the cliff. Listening, we could hear the robbers actually at work. I first cut their rope, cutting off their means of escape. Then, making secure a good stout rope of my own, I lowered myself down the cliff. How do you think he felt during that? Do you think that he was afraid? I would be afraid. Okay, let's see what happens next. There were 8 robbers at work, and when I neared the bottom, there was an awkward moment or two. Eventually, the robbers saw reason and departed. The rest of the night I spent guarding the spot. So he went in there knowing that there were robbers in there. Would you have done that? I wouldn't have. I would have been too afraid. All right. Why do you think he stayed to guard that spot? Probably to make sure no other robbers came to steal stuff, right? For 6 years, archaeologist Howard Carter searched for the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Carter and Lord Carnarvon had focused their attention on one area in the Valley of the Kings. All that was left was the ground beneath some huts in which ancient workers had lived while digging the royal tombs. Carter decided to give this area one last try. He and his men removed the huts and leveled off the soil below. As Carter finished removing the first of the workers' huts, he found something very exciting. For there, lost in the world for nearly 33 centuries and almost overlooked by Carter and his partner Carnarvon in 6 years of digging, was a stone staircase leading down into the rocky floor of the valley. Where do you think that stone staircase leads? How do you think Howard Carter is feeling? Let's see what happens. Carter and his men uncovered the steps one by one until, as they cleared the dirt from the top of the 12th step, they saw beyond it, in Carter's own words, the upper part of a doorway. Atop the door was a hieroglyphic seal showing that the door had been sealed shut under royal authority. Remember, authority is power to make rules and laws to make sure people follow them. In this sentence, the word seal means an official mark. Whoever had been buried here was either royal or someone very important to the pharaoh. Almost overcome with excitement, Carter cut a small hole in the door and shone a light through the hole. Inside, he saw a hallway filled to the top with rocks. It took all of his self-control not to break through and begin to fling the rocks out. Instead, leaving some of his men to guard the place, he covered the door up again and rode off through the moonlight, thinking anything might lie beyond that passage. Yet none of them was exactly sure what Carter had found. The end of that one. Remember, that's only part 1. All right, guys, go ahead and take a wiggle break if you need one, and then come right back. All right, so what was the name of the pharaoh in today's Read Aloud? Now, you guys have to try and say that hard name. It was Tutankhamun. I still don't think I'm saying it right. But what was his nickname? King Tut. Was King Tut an adult or a child when he became pharaoh? He was a child, right? Do you remember how old he was? He was only 9 years old. How crazy is that? Was King Tut pharaoh for many, many years or just a short time? Just a short time. And why was he only a leader for a short time? Because he died at like the age 19. So he died pretty young. Was King Tut buried in a pyramid? No. Why not? Because pyramids were no longer used for burial during the time that King Tut lived, right? Where was he buried? In a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And who was Howard Carter? The archaeologist looking for King Tut's tomb. Why do you think he was interested in finding King Tut's tomb? Maybe he wanted to be famous. He thought there would be lots of treasure. It would be a pretty cool archaeological discovery. Ooh. What do you think it would have been like to work with him? And this is your opinion, so your answer might be different than mine. I think it would probably be fun and lots of adventure, but I also think it would be kind of scary. And I'll get really tired. All right, word work time. In the read aloud you heard, a British archaeologist named Howard Carter was interested in trying to find the lost tombs in the Valley of the Kings. I want you to try and say the word archaeologist with me. Ready? Archaeologist. Archaeologist. Okay. Can you say that in a whisper voice? Archaeologist. Can you say it in a robot voice? Archaeologist. Can you say it in a mouse voice? Archaeologist. Good job. Okay, so an archaeologist is a scientist who studies how people lived in the past by looking at what they left behind, such as tools or pottery. Archaeologists often dig into the ground to find what was left behind. An archaeologist found pottery from an ancient Native American village. Have you ever heard about the work of an archaeologist? Try to use the word archaeologist when you talk about it. What's the word we've been talking about? Archaeologist. All right, so I'm going to read a sentence, and if it describes the work of an archaeologist, say, that's an archaeologist. If it does not describe the work of an archaeologist, say, that is not an archaeologist. Ready? I have been digging for evidence of how the pilgrims lived long ago. That's an archaeologist. I have been digging up potatoes from my garden. That's not an archaeologist. I have been digging for evidence that Native Americans lived in this area long ago. That's an archaeologist. I've been digging a hole to plant a tree. That's not an archaeologist. I have been digging for evidence that there used to be a city along the banks of a river. That is an archaeologist, okay? So when they're digging for evidence of something, that is when they are archaeologists, okay? All right. So what did we learn about King Tut? That he has a really hard name to say, and Miss Vanmart's not very good at saying it. What else? He became the pharaoh when he was only 9 years old, right? He died pretty young, and he wasn't buried in a pyramid. He was buried in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Okay. How was he different from Hatshepsut? He was a lot younger when he became pharaoh. He was a boy, right? How is he the same as Hatshepsut? They were both leaders, right? And they were both leaders, but they weren't leaders for very long, right? Okay. So let's double check that we have gone over our learning objectives. So we reviewed the significance of the pharaoh Hatshepsut. We talked about her. We identified key details about the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Yeah. We were able to demonstrate an understanding of the word archaeologist. We're going to create a class timeline to depict pharaohs of ancient Egypt over time. And we will explain how pharaohs impacted the ancient Egyptian civilization. All right, friends, that's all for today. Awesome job. Bye.